The offer comes in as a PDF attachment on a Tuesday, sitting in an inbox next to a coupon email, and a reminder that the walk-in freezer is due for inspection. You almost miss it. The subject line just says Magnolia Table, LOL. You open it standing at the host stand your father built with his own hands, out of reclaimed oak, and the number inside doesn't look real. $41,200,000. You read it twice. A third time, to make sure your eyes aren't doing something your brain hasn't caught up to yet. Behind you, the lunch rush is starting. Your sister Danielle is in the kitchen yelling about a ticket that's sat too long. Your brother Paul is out back on a smoke break he thinks nobody knows about. None of them know this email exists. None of them know a private equity group out of Chicago has been quietly buying up regional restaurant groups for 18 months. And that Magnolia Table, for locations, 22 years of your family's name on the awning, now has a price tag attached to it. You close the laptop. You go seat a party of 4. The restaurant was never supposed to be worth anything on paper. Your father opened it in a strip mall outside Charlotte with money borrowed from 3 relatives who expected it to fail within a year. It didn't fail. It became the place people brought their parents on anniversaries, the place where you learned to run a register at 12, and a kitchen line at 16, and eventually the entire business at 29, when your father's heart gave him 18 months' notice instead of none. You built the 4th location yourself. You're the reason the group is worth $40 million instead of 4. Danielle handles the books. Paul manages 2 locations day to day. Neither has ever asked what the company is actually worth, because in a family business, nobody thinks to ask. You just show up. You just keep it running. You don't tell them about the email that week. You tell yourself it's not real yet, just a number from a firm that sends letters like this to 100 restaurant groups a month hoping one bites. There's something to decide within 9 days. The buyer's team flies down and takes a table in the back during a slow Wednesday afternoon. 3 men in blazers who order iced tea and don't touch the menu. You sit across from them in a booth that still has a water ring from a table your father wiped down himself for 2 decades. They talk in numbers you understand instinctively from the floor level, but have never had to defend at a table like this. EBITDA. Trailing revenue multiples. A non-compete that would keep your name off any restaurant within 100 miles for 5 years. You nod along like a person who does this often. You are not. You are a person whose hands still smell faintly of fryer oil from the shift you covered that morning because someone called out. They leave you with a term sheet and a deadline of 30 days. You call an attorney a colleague once mentioned, a woman named Reina Ibarra, who handles mid-market M&A out of a downtown office with a waiting room that has better coffee than your restaurant serves. She reads the letter of intent in 11 minutes without saying anything, the way someone reads a document they've read 400 times in slightly different forms. Then she looks up and asks who else has equity in the company. You tell her the truth. Officially, on paper, it's just you. Your father transferred full ownership to you 2 years before he died, the year he first started forgetting which of his 3 children ran which location. Danielle and Paul have salaries, titles, decades of sweat equity that means everything, and legally means nothing. You always meant to formalize something for them. You never did, because the restaurant never felt like something with a ceiling on it. It felt like something you'd all just keep doing, together, indefinitely. It becomes real on a Thursday 4 weeks later when you sign in Reina's office. A 9-page packet that transfers Magnolia Table, all 4 locations, your father's name still on the original lease from 2004, into the hands of a holding company you never heard of before that Tuesday email. The wire lands 2 days later. $41,200,000, minus fees, minus commission, minus the 20% capital gains tax that hits differently once you watch it subtracted in real time. The number that finally settles into your account is $31,400,000. You sit in your car in the parking lot for 40 minutes before you go inside. Through the window, You can see Danielle laughing at the register. You can see Paul carrying a buzz tub through the kitchen doors. Everything on the other side of that glass looks exactly the way it's looked for 22 years, except that none of it is yours anymore. It belongs to a holding company in Chicago that's already sent a memo about rebranding 2 locations within 18 months. You go inside. You don't tell them yet either. The severance terms Raina negotiated give Danielle and Paul 18 more months of employment at their current salaries. A detail you fought for line by line that neither of them will ever know you fought for. It's not nothing. It's also not what's actually owed, and you know it, sitting across from your sister a week later at her kitchen table, telling her the company's been sold, watching her do the arithmetic you've already done 4 times over. How much, she asks? Not casually. Enough to be comfortable, you tell her. Enough that Dad's name will still be respected in how it's handled. You don't say the number. You've decided the number is the one thing you're never going to say out loud, because you've watched what a number that size does to a room the second it's spoken. It stops being a fact, and starts being a debt somebody feels you owe them. Paul takes it worse. Quiet, in a way that's harder to sit across from. He asks if there was equity he should have had. You tell him what Raina told you, that legally it was always structured as yours alone, which is true, and also feels, saying it to your own brother, like a door closing with a legal justification taped to it. You give him $200,000 the following month. You tell him it's a bonus from the sale. It isn't. It's from your account, wired through an LLC so the source would never trace back to a lump sum that would force him to ask the real question. He thanks you like it's more than he expected. It's less than 1% of what actually landed 9 days earlier. You don't correct the math in his head. You've become, without quite meaning to, a person who lets people believe a smaller number, so they never have to feel the weight of the real one. You buy nothing dramatic for 8 months. Raina introduces you to a fee-only advisor named Colston Reeves who doesn't try to sell you anything on the first call. He walks you through a plan almost insulting in its simplicity. 2/3 into a diversified index portfolio. A piece into municipal bonds, boring, tax-exempt, the kind of asset nobody at a family dinner would ever ask about. A donor-advised fund seated quietly, that you'll eventually use for a scholarship in your father's name. You keep working. Not at Magnolia Table. The buyer's team eases you out within 4 months, politely. The way people do when they've paid for something and don't need the original owner reminding staff how it used to be done. You take a consulting role for a fraction of what you used to make, and you tell people at dinner parties you're between things, which is technically true, and also the kind of sentence that stops follow-up questions. Danielle finds work at another restaurant within 6 months. You could call her, could quietly fund something the way you did for Paul. You don't. Not right away. Because some part of you is still working out what you owe the people you grew up next to versus what you owe the version of yourself that stayed up until midnight for a decade making the numbers work. You eventually help her open something small, a $200,000 loan from an LLC she'll spend 3 years paying back to an entity she has no idea traces to you. She still doesn't know the real number. Neither does Paul. Neither does your mother, who calls sometimes to ask if you're doing okay since everything happened with the restaurant. Assuming you took some modest payout and are figuring out your next move like everyone else your age. You are not. Your account is quietly compounding toward a number that will likely double before you turn 50, without you doing anything beyond what Colston already set in motion. You drive a 4-year-old Tacoma. You live in the same rental you lived in the year before the sale. Nothing about the outside of your life announces what happened in that booth with the water ring, or in Raina's office that Thursday, or in the 9 days between an email you almost didn't open and a decision that quietly rewrote the shape of your family without most of them ever knowing. You know now what the silence actually costs. Not money, you have more of that than you know what to do with. It's the specific weight of sitting across from your sister, watching her do the math on a smaller number than the real one, and choosing, Every time, not to correct her. That's not protecting her. You know that now. It's protecting the version of yourself that still needs to believe you'd have made the same choice at any size. The restaurant's name is different now. The buyer rebranded 2 locations last spring. Your father's name is off the awning at the location he built with his own hands. You drove past it once, slowed down, didn't stop. Somewhere behind that new sign is a number nobody in your family will ever know, sitting quietly in an account that grew out of everything he spent 22 years building, and the question you still haven't answered is whether the silence was ever really for them, or whether it was always, quietly, for you.